Right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being on time. Today, we're happy to receive Darren Webb from AntWorks. He's Chief Partnership Officer with AntWorks at the moment, to speak with us on the Career Success Story series. Before I hand the time over to Ian, please just remember to keep your videos on, sound off, and leave your questions to the end. Ian?
Thank you very much, Ding. As Ding has actually mentioned as well, Darren is currently right now based here in Singapore, and he's actually currently right now the Chief Partnership Officer for AntWorks. So now, without further ado, I shall now pass the mic over to Darren for his presentation.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you, ESSEC, for this kind invitation, and a pleasure to meet you all, albeit virtually. Seems a little bit ironic that I'm sat in your campus and you guys aren't, but it's a good reminder for me. It's been 5 years, I think, since I graduated from my ESSEC MBA here. We were the first cohort actually for the Asia track, so yeah, some good memories of being in this building. Last time I think I was quite drunk when I left, so hopefully I didn't get in too much trouble because the security let me back in. So look, thank you for your time today. A few things before we start. I'm going to let you into a little secret. I'm not works for very much longer. Okay, so I'll take you through where I'm going to next, and for me, it's a very exciting stage of my career. Number two, a little bit back to point one. My deck is really 2 decks merged together, right? Because I wanted to take the opportunity to take you through the business I'm just about to establish. So first of all, we'll go through some learnings myself, some of the pain I went through, some of the challenges I went through, and then we'll talk about the business that I'm just in the process of establishing. And the third thing, just before we start, is it talks about this as a success story. I don't necessarily see it that way, right? I see where I am yesterday as work in progress, where I am today is work in progress, and where I'll be tomorrow is work in progress. You know, my view is I'm never going to be a success. I can walk away from work and choose whether to go back again, you know, choose whether I have a financial requirement to go back to work again. And if I do, then I would consider myself not a success, still work in progress. So whilst I appreciate the terminology that the college uses, I don't see myself as still learning, still trying to strive to achieve more. So just to put that in context. So let's start. Does anyone recognize these 3 percentages? And now I know you're all on mute, but I'm not seeing anyone nod yet so far, right? So this actually is from the ESSEC website, and there's a few nods now, right? So this is talking about the percentage of people that change either sector, function, or location post doing the course that you're undertaking. It's a quite enormous number, right? Now, I know I did an ESSEC MBA, which is completely different from you guys. You've made a full-time commitment. Some of you would have left careers, I assume. Some of you would have taken career breaks to do this. We were doing it as a part-time piece, so it's a little bit different. But I'll tell you an interesting. If I look back now, I think there was 14 on our cohort. Over half have changed job, right? Over half. A few have changed location, and definitely a lot of changed function. And so I just want to, for the first few slides, just kind of embrace change, right? Because it's coming one way or the other for you guys. And I always find it really interesting that companies put people like yourselves or my cohort, often they sponsor you through an MBA, particularly an ESSEC MBA. And it's interesting because I imagine if you do some research, and I'm sure Ian or Larry could either support this or disprove it, but it's interesting. I'm sure not that many stay with that employer for 2 or 3 years post doing that course, right? So I find it really fascinating. These companies push people through or support them through, a better phrase, and then those people broaden their horizons, broaden their view of the world. Maybe that's seen as a good thing by the companies, and it's not for me to say it's not, but it's interesting. So change is inevitable. Change is inevitable for all of you, and I would just ask you to be open about that and embrace it, because it's whether it's in technical change, industrial change, or personal change, it's clearly coming. And the reality is you can't control it. You can influence it, but you can't control it. So a little bit about my journey. So I just kind of wanted to do it from a kind of from where to where. So I actually spent 20 years in corporate world, right? So when I started, I joined a company called Cable and Wireless, which I'm sure none of you will have heard of, but it's a big telco, global telco. I don't know why I joined a telco. I have no idea why I joined a telco. My rationale was, it was a big company, there must be opportunity, it's global, maybe if I do well, things will happen. And that was it. That was my logic. There was no more to it. There was no certain, I want to spend my life in telecoms or in this business. The reality is I spent nearly 20 years between there and the company that bought us at the end, which was Vodafone, which I'm sure all of you have heard of. And I don't regret it. Okay, I don't regret it per se, because it's now part of me. It's part of what makes me the person I am today. I learned a lot in corporate world. Right? I thought I had very senior roles, leadership positions, and I did. I had P&L responsibility for regions, for sales teams. That meant true profit and loss understanding. Then I went to join 2 startups or 2 relatively young companies in a row, and I changed industry for the first time. And then I realized what I learned in corporate was a really, really good foundation, but it wasn't 2 sides of the coin. Okay, it was incredibly different. The frustrations often in corporate are it can be very slow, cumbersome, elongated decision-making, approval processes. The benefits are very often, maybe not so today, but often very secure, all of the comforts, all of the support you need, lots of resource, all of that kind of good stuff. Then you go to a startup environment and it kind of flips on its head. And there's no right or wrong, by the way. There's no, I'm suggesting you go this way or this way, you should go where you want to. But in startups, as the MD of a business, you really do understand P&L. Because in a corporate, you're understanding functional P&L. So if you're running a global business, as an example, you've certainly got the P, because you see the revenue, right? And that's not really profit, but you see the revenue. You may see a margin percentage, right? It's probably a hypothetical margin percentage, but you'll see it. So you've got an idea of P. L, you have no idea, because you have your staff costs, and that's it, pretty much. Travel, in where the cost of the business came in, L&D, R&D, all of the things that make up a business to the point you sell something, you don't see them in your P&L. And so it's not really a P&L is what I learned, because when I went to run a much smaller business of probably about $8 million when I took it on, which was tiny for me from a corporate world, but big for them, right? Big for them. You know, I started worrying about how much the water cooler cost us. You know, I worried about every single dollar. And my CEO taught me a really valuable lesson one day that you won't learn in corporate world. And that's not to say you won't learn great lessons in corporate world. He said, Darren, you're the MD, you make decisions on where we spend money. But remember, for every $1 of OPEX we spend, that's over $20 of enterprise value we will lose when we sell the business, right? So start a different way, which is, where's my exit? Where's my flip point? Where's my valuation come from? Corporates think about share price and investors, right? And of course there's investors here, but there's often not share price, right? So different pressures, different challenges, but it was great for me to go from a corporate safe world to a risky startup kind of world. From a geography point of view, actually, I was born in the UK. So I think I'm probably the only English guy to have gone through the MBA with ESSEC and spent 18 months listening to particularly the French people call me very, very interesting names about being English. So that was good. Then I actually moved to the Middle East for a few years, back to the UK. And then when 10 years ago, I got an opportunity to move to Asia. And I'm going to jump a little bit, because on my slide next, I talk about luck. And actually, there's a huge amount of luck in your career, right? There may be a huge amount of luck in your life, good and bad, right? And again, you can't control some of this. It just will happen to you. And of course, we all hope it's positive things, but there will be setbacks as well, things you couldn't control. COVID, you guys shouldn't be sat at home now. You should be sat in here having a social element to your learning as well as the academic point, but you're not, because of a situation way out of your control. But I'll come back to luck, because I truly believe it's a factor in my career, certainly, and I'm sure in many people's career. So I went from college to EMBA. So I didn't really, little secret, don't tell Ian and Larry, let them shut their ears. I didn't really finish university in the way I wanted to, for good reasons, for personal reasons. And coming back to the EMBA was my way of proving to myself, actually, I could go back and do that, finish that off in a way many years later. And I had the pleasure of doing it here with Sedimir, who I'm sure has probably taught you at some point, who is, because he knows everything about pretty much everything. So if you've had the pleasure of being taught by Sedimir, you'll realize just how scary his level of his intelligence are. And I was fortunate to come out of here with honours, right? So very proud of the time that I spent here, and a great cohort that are still in touch today. In fact, many of them met up a week and a half ago. I couldn't go, but we're still in regular contact, and I'm sure that's something you guys will do as well. So again, student to guest speaker, back to student, hopefully. And again, you'll hear me later talk about constantly learning, right? Constantly trying to find a way to improve your understanding. And even if it's just, I read every night, and I try to read really clever business books sometimes. And honestly, I get a bit bored because I've been doing business all day. So then I go and read a thriller or something that just distracts me. But it's still my way of just keeping an active mind, right? Still seeking some kind of additional learnings, be it from whatever kind of book I'm reading. So I would honestly keep telling you, keep learning. Even when you finish your course, you'll probably want to not go into a classroom for a number of years. That's cool. There's other ways to learn through learning. I was always in sales, okay? So I pretty much grew up in sales. I don't know why. I just had a passion, early passion for selling stuff. I used to, when I was about 8, I used to get my toys that I'd finished playing with, and I would set up a big table outside my house, and I'd put my toys out, and I would sell them to kids from the neighborhood. And I'd reinvest that money into the next toy I wanted. Right? I've tried to get my kids to do the same thing, and it is pointless. I cannot get them to do it. Right? That's partly a generational thing. It's partly a different view of finance and wealth, I guess. But that was me, without knowing, becoming a salesperson and becoming a negotiator. Right? So I was just born that way. It wasn't something that I kind of encouraged. It just became part of me. And so my roles have always pretty much involved sales. And what I would say to you is, no matter what you do in any organization, try to think of yourself as a salesperson, because at the end of the day, you are representing your brand, right? Even if it's in a back office function, you are representing your brand, and the combined wealth of that brand is part of you, right? So I like to think everyone's in sales, right? Everyone who engages with a customer, engages with a supplier, who engages with a colleague is selling something, right? Is selling something. So for me, it's always been very much part of the core capability. So I spent, as I said, 20 years in telco. Then I spent 3 years running a data center here. Data centers is kind of peripheral of telco. They're kind of on the edge, not necessarily pure telco, but on the edge. Most telcos have now left data centers when they just exploded in value. So it's quite funny to see the telcos miss out on all of that money. And I took on a loss-making business here. It was losing probably 6 to 7 million of cash a year. And I turned that business around, made it cash flow positive, and then sold the business. I wasn't an owner, okay, being very clear, but I worked for the board who were based in the US, and taking a business that's loss-making and turning it around is quite an achievement. So not just growing the top line in revenue, but also taking cost out. Now, anyone can take cost out. Please understand this. Anyone can take cost out. You do not need to be a global MBA student to take cost out. It's really simple. First thing you do, rule 1, stop traveling. Now, actually, that's quite easy today because no one's traveling, but in the old world, stop traveling. Stop discretionary spend. Then it gets a bit tougher because you're into people at that point, right? Honestly, you're into people. You can have energy costs people, and that gets, I'm not going to touch on that because that's a whole different subject, but anyone can take costs out, but to grow a business top line is more difficult because you're selling more, right? That means you're bringing customers in, and that means you're selling a vision, you're selling a dream, right? So don't just think of improving a P&L as, well, and take costs out. Of course, that proves it, but your top line stayed. You want them to be doing this at the same time, and then the gap between costs and revenue goes, and that's your margin, right? So all that, anyone that says it any more than that is overstretching it. There's your revenue, there's your costs, there's your margin. Get one above the other, you've got a cash flow positive business. You're in that's a good starting point. I'll touch on what I'm just about to leave AntWorks, and I'll come back to that. So I was probably a non-risk taker for 20 years, and now I would consider myself a medium risk taker, about to become a very big risk taker. Okay, now that comes with confidence. It comes with, I don't want to say maturity, because if any of you know me, that's probably not a good word to describe me, but it comes with experience. I would say knowledge of what you can do and what you can achieve, confidence. But it doesn't mean, I'm 47, about to do a startup myself. Lots more startups are being created by people in their 50s, late 50s. It's a very, very successful age range for them to do it. Their financial position is probably different. Therefore, their element of risk is probably lower because they're probably financially stable at that point, or they're probably paid off their mortgage, whatever it may be. Then you've got the other end where they're taking risk day one, where they actually haven't got mortgages, they haven't got big costs, right? So there's no perfect time to do it, but now is my time, right? So now is my time. And actually, at least one other guy on our cohort is also CEO of his own startup business back in France, right? So there's at least two of us now. Oh, three. Sorry, Solomon as well, who he may have, I know you met. But three of us have now started up a business within 5 years of graduating ESSEC. And our focus was on entrepreneurship. So it's quite, I think, for ESSEC to see 25% of their cohort are now running their own businesses, it's a pretty impressive ratio. So have a look around on the screen, guys, because if you do the same ratio, three of you are going to be CEOs in a few years. So quite exciting to think of it that way. And from success to learning, I just took on a role a year ago in an artificial intelligence company. And it's predominantly sales again, and then they made me chief partnership officer, which was looking at our global partnership strategy. And honestly, I'd say I failed in that role. I didn't achieve what I could achieve. I don't know why. Things happened in the business, things happened organizationally, but I didn't achieve. I'd been a high achiever all my life, and I didn't achieve in that role. And that's something I have to self-internalize and take accountability for. I can blame COVID, I can blame the team, I can blame a lot of shit that went on in and around me, but I've got to take accountability for that, right? Because I know I could have done better in that last role. I don't know if it was a lack of desire, if my mind was torn because I've had this startup at the back of my mind every night, banging away. But I failed in my last role. And, because in sales, I talked to a lot of salespeople, and, salespeople are very good at saying, it wasn't my fault, right? It wasn't my fault, it was someone else's fault. And I would just encourage you all, regardless of your vocation, regardless of where you sit within a business, to take accountability, right? Because at the end of the day, you can still be the best you can be, even if what's going around you is not great, right? And I wasn't great in my last role. So I leave a little bit sad in a way, sad for myself and sad for my colleagues that they didn't see the best of me, right? And I will take it, accept it, acknowledge it, and use it as fuel for the next thing, where it's completely on me, right? It's completely on me. So if this fails, I'm done, right? I can come back in 2 years' time and it can be called Darren Webb, the failure story, right? Because I've failed to lead a startup into growth mode. So I want to be clear, I don't know how others present, but I've not always been a success. And the last year has been a tough year for me to internalize, but I've accepted it and I've moved on. And like I said, I use it positively now. So some personal learnings, you know, hopefully the kind of change from where this, there to this, that, career to industry, just be prepared to reinvent yourself. And pivot is a lovely word that is very commonly used in business now, probably a bit too much, but be prepared for it, because actually your generation is different from my generation, right? In my generation, it was still quite common to work for companies for 4, 5, 6 years. No one questioned you. Now, you know, my 2 oldest daughters are 23 and 21, still at university, but I think if they work for 2 years at a company and then move on, that will be 18 months to 2 years. And companies have to get their head around it as well, which is, well, do we invest in people for that long, 18 to, what's our role here? Is it to try and convince them to stay or train them to go, right? And that's going to be an interesting dichotomy, I think, for a lot of businesses going forward. But I think for your generation, 18 months, 2 years, you'll probably end up working for multiple different companies. You know, it's certainly not a job for life like it was in my parents' generation. So things are happening, and as long as you accept that, it becomes easier to deal with as those things come through. Always keep learning. You know, I've mentioned that, so I won't talk about that again. Be clear where the opportunities are. You know, so I spent too long in telco in hindsight. It was a great industry when I joined, booming, you know, a lot of investment into that, a lot of fun money coming into it. But probably for the last 5, 6, 7 years, it was a kind of a dying industry, because the OTT guys, Amazon, Google, Facebook, WhatsApp had come in and taken a lot of their business, right? A huge amount of their businesses. And we just didn't react. We were too big. We were too addicted to the revenue streams to react. We didn't have the thinking, we didn't have the strength of conviction to say, okay, how do we turn this big ship around and make it move in a different direction? So I probably spent 5, 6 years too long there, but that's on me. So look for where the growth areas are, guys. You know, look for which industries you see as the next big thing, and be prepared to jump if that makes sense to you. If that makes sense for your career and your personal situation, be prepared to jump. Don't stay in an industry because it's what you know. If there's not growth there, then ask yourself why you're staying. And it may be a good reason, and that's, again, fine. But if it's growth you're looking for, you've got to look for growth sectors, right? And you've got to jump on that wave and ride it while it's in growth. And then be thinking ahead. Is this going to be 2-3 year window? Okay, what's next? Have I got myself aligned for the next wave? Because I think you're going to go through a much different, again, industries aren't going to be 20, 30 years. You're going to see companies pop up for ByteDance. 2 years ago, I don't know. I don't think it was around 2 years ago. You may tell me it was, but it kind of sprang out of nowhere. And from a data center point of view, these guys use more data center capacity than the biggest companies you have heard of in the banking industry that have been around 100 years. How did that happen? Right? It's just they use lots of video, they use lots of high HD, but that just goes to show, right? Industries are being changed by businesses that we'd never even heard of 18 months, 2 years ago. It's unbelievable today. My customer set, because we're building a business that's probably 2 to 3 years away from going live, is people I haven't even heard of today. That's scary, right? I'm trying to sell to people they may not even exist yet, because we're not going to take their revenue for 2 to 3 years. So it's, you know, you have to kind of go, shit, that's really weird, but that is the situation we're in, right? So constantly think about where the next growth is coming from and see whether that's an opportunity for you. Be accountable, right? No one owes you anything. Honestly, you know, you go MBAs, you'll be intelligent people, you'll be very attractive to employers, but they don't owe you anything. They don't owe you anything. You have to try and make sure you're accountable for yourself, right? You're going to come out of the course at a difficult time, just like my daughters. Jobs are going to be challenging. You know, there's not going to be, you know, getting into Singapore is much tougher now than it was pre-COVID. If for anyone that's considering that, you've got to be accountable. You've got to drive your career. You've got to own it, because no one else is going to own it, right? And so I know that might sound obvious, but I see a lot of people come out and go, okay, I'm just waiting now for the world to come and show me. It's not going to happen. You've got to be determined to get out there and make it happen for yourself. So luck, right? I'll come back to luck. Being clever and intelligent, these are my personal learnings. This is not my advice to you, right? Being clever and intelligent are 2 different things. 2 massively different things in my head, right? you can be the most intelligent person out there. It doesn't mean you're clever. And you can be the cleverest person. It doesn't mean you're intelligent. So it doesn't matter which one you are, but be clear. I'm not intelligent. I'm quite clever. I understand how to position myself in an opportunity to make it work for me, right? But that doesn't mean I'm the cleverest guy, the intelligent guy in the room. No, right? And you don't have to be. And when also, you know, I'm now building a team for my business. I want people to be more intelligent than me. I want them to be much more intelligent than me, right? I want to sit in the room and go, shit, guys, I can't even keep up with what you guys are talking about. But I can own and drive this car, right? I can do that bit. You guys are the ones adding all the value, right? So, you know, think about which one you'd have to be one or the other to be, you can be both, to be honest, but just being intelligent is not going to be enough. You have to be clever as well. You have to see the opportunities. You have to look for the opportunities. One of my learnings as well, take something from every boss you've ever had, right? I've worked for some amazing bosses, and this is partly the luck, right? If it wasn't for, I can think of 2 or 3 occasions in my career where something just happened, an organizational change, which meant I started working for someone else. And it just ignited my career. It just ignited it. The chemistry changed. They saw something in me that someone else didn't see. I saw something in them, a level of trust and relationship that I could build that I didn't have before. And I can think of 2 or 3 occasions where that is fundamentally why I am where I am today. If that hadn't happened, I'd be somewhere else. I don't know where, I'd be somewhere else. And that's part of the luck thing as well, right? You can't control who you're going to work for in some organizations, right? You just can't. I mean, even if you go to work for a boss, that person leaves the next day, you're going to get a new boss, right? And so luck plays a massive part, and you can't control it, but you can embrace it, right? And say, okay, I see something here. I see an opportunity with this person to really build something and put myself, accelerate my career. You know, a guy that I work with today, he just moved company and got 110% pay rise. And I was texting last night saying, good for you, dude. That will happen to you once or twice in your life. That's it. Once or twice. That kind of huge increment, right? And it's normally when you leave a company, honestly, which is a bit of a strange one. But actually, one of my huge increment was company. There was an opportunity. They wanted me to do it. They were desperate for me to do it. And I said, these are my terms. And it was, I mean, I was pitching it very high. And they went, okay. I just saw it, right? I just saw their need for me, and I recognized the value I had in that situation, and I took advantage of it, right? That's not took advantage of them. They wanted me to do it, right? So it was a win-win. Those things will happen to you once or twice in your life. Maximize it. Maximize it. Whether it's a move to a different country, whether it's more responsibility, more money, whatever's important to you, maximize it by knowing your own value in that situation. Okay, it won't happen more than 2 or 3 times, probably. Okay, don't let it pass. And you know, and also I've worked for some terrible bosses, awful bosses, right? Not horrendous. I haven't had, but ones where I've just not had much respect for the way they interact with people or the way they treat other people. And actually, I still take a lot from them. I take a huge amount from them because I don't want to do it that way, right? But I had to see it to understand that, because I saw the impact that they had on the other person, and I thought, I don't want to be that guy, right? I don't want to be that guy making people feel like that. So it's not like I go, wow, you never taught me anything. You taught me a lot. But you taught me things that I've taken from a different way, which is I don't want to be that person, right? But so just because you work for someone that maybe you don't like, maybe you don't respect so much, which is not a healthy situation, by the way, but still learn from them. Still learn, because there's still opportunities to learn in that situation. Networking is key, right? Wow, I've got 10 minutes. Networking is key. I'm terrible at networking. Second failure on my part, I'm terrible. So what I've done this time, my co-founder is a brilliant networker. Right? He's brilliant. So I've complemented my skill set with a co-founder who's got a different skill set. And that forces me to do the bit that I'm not great at, right? So again, look for complementary skills in your team or people around you that can mean you can't be perfect at everything, right? None of you can be perfect at everything. Some things just won't be a natural, something you feel comfortable with. Find a way to make it work, right? Whether it's with a partner, whether it's with a friend, somehow find a way, right? So that I'll do that. I'm not going to talk, I already talked about corporate. So I'm going to jump ahead because I know one of the tracks is digital transformation. So this is my new business, right? So from mid-April, I launched this business. It's already semi-set up. Team is being built, and we're just about to start raising funds now. So we raise about $3 million in the first instance. That's just seed money. The thing with data centers is you go from raising seed money of 2 to 3 million to 2 to 300 million. There's nothing in between. There's zero in between, because data centers, if you don't know, they're really boring, but they're really big buildings that cost a shitload of money, right? So you ever see a really boring building, grey, that's probably with some very funky looking equipment on the top, that's probably a data center. Don't ever go in one unless you really are a bit techie geek, because they're really boring. But the multiples in data centers are one of the most impressive asset classes out there. So you'll get between 20 and 30 times EBIT in your valuation. So every commercial real estate guy now wants to get into data centers. I came from data centers as an operator. So now between me and my partner, we raise money because he's a banker and a great networker. We raise 2 to 3 million in the next month or so. And then we go out to raise 2 to 300 million. And we probably need to raise over 500 million over the next few years. So it's a huge undertaking. And, of course, I hope we're successful. So we're a bit different, right? So I'm not going to bang on too much about this, because unless anyone's from data centers, which I hope you're not, the difference is we're trying to put sustainability at the core, right? So these things give you an idea. There's about 60 data centers in Singapore. They take about 25% of the total energy of Singapore, right? So the government says bad data centers because they suck up so much energy. You know why they suck up so much energy? Because you're looking at a screen, and if any of you got another iPad just off to the side watching Netflix in HD, that's sucking up a lot of energy, right? So that's the reality. I have 3 screens at home going at the same time while I'm working. You magnify that by, that's a lot of energy, right? So forget about businesses, just us as consumers on our smartphones watching movies is sucking up a lot of energy. So governments now are getting really concerned about it, because it's not just the cost, but the carbon footprint that's the issue, right? Of course, it's the cost as well. So our model is to put sustainability in at the start of a data center. Most data centers now are retrofitting, trying to find sustainability power. So it could be hydro energy in Philippines or Indonesia. It could be hydro. It could be solar, but solar doesn't really generate enough power for a data center. But the point is, we're trying to build a business that's very green, hence the colors on the screen. That is whilst it's a carbon neutral business, because we believe that will attract green investment. So green investment is a massive thing now, right? People, funds, companies, Amazon, Google, all of these guys, Microsoft, made commitments to be carbon neutral by 2030. Governments have said the same thing. So we believe we can take an industry that never focused on renewables and make renewable the core to it. That will not only allow us to attract funds, it will allow us to attract customers. And it will allow us to attract the green investment as well, right? And also get government support, because they say you're the good guys amongst a challenging industry, even though we know we need data centers. So whilst we'll be Singapore headquartered, actually we're looking at emerging markets. So not Singapore, not Hong Kong. Again, lots of my competitors will go out with a tier 1 strategy. We're going for tier 2. So again, the reason I'm telling you this, guys, is we looked at the market coming in, all doing the same thing. So how do we differentiate from a strategy point of view? We differentiate by going to tier 2 markets where they're not as mature as the tier 1s, obviously, where land price is not as expensive, where renewable is actually a source of energy. So if I go to the Philippines tomorrow, I can get fully renewable. If I go to Singapore today, I can get zero renewable, basically zero renewable, right? So we are very much trying to differentiate by the fact that it's tier 2 and it's renewable. So again, I guess if there's any learnings there, it's if you're going to go into a market, you have to differentiate. And that's okay if there's room for another Me Too, right? That's okay. But if there's not, and you're trying to raise that kind of money, 200-300 million, those investors want to see something different. They want to buy into something different. Right, so we're hoping this is it, right? So we're making good early progress, and we believe we can raise the money, the seed money, pretty quickly. So with the kind of where we're focused again, again, differentiation. The top ones, advanced, are I don't know if you can see them, but very mature markets, right? So everyone goes to these places. They're very credible from a data center point of view, very safe, very easy to do business generally. Hong Kong, obviously, now. Japan's always been challenging certainly from a language and a culture point of view, but all of the big guys are in there now. China's the next level down because it's a very insular market. Okay, there's not many foreign players, obviously, for geopolitical reasons in China, but there are some. But the ones in the emerging are where we focus on, right? So this is really high growth, digital savvy, big population, growing population. Remember, right, in India, using it as an example, no one went to a retail bank, pretty much, right? They skipped a whole generation and went straight to digital banking. Hundreds of millions of people went straight to using a smartphone, right? And skipped that whole thing that we went through of queuing up at a bank. Don't do it, right? And it's the same for lots of industries where they can just skip that technical generation and leap ahead. So we're very confident those emerging markets are the market saturated. They're ready for new providers, and that's where we're focusing. This is just a bit about the demand for renewables, right? And again, the reason why I think this is interesting to you guys is no matter what's part of the supply chain you may end up in from a supply point of view, because if you sell something, you're a supplier, right? Businesses will now make it mandatory that they only deal with green providers, right? They will make it mandatory. It's coming. It's coming in 2 to 3 years. At the moment, it'd be nice, Mr. Supplier, if you had a renewable source, or if your business had signed up to renewables, or if your business was offsetting their energy. It will become, if you're not doing that, Mr. Supplier, we can't deal with you for anything, right? So it really governments now to say the carbon footprints targets by 2030. They're not going to miss because the enterprises aren't playing the game, right? So it'll be forced through the supply chain. So it's coming, right? So whatever industry you're in, it will impact you differently to different degrees, but it is coming in one way or the other. I'd say the only reason I put this slide up is the most wonderful thing of doing my own startup over the last 2 months has been building a team. The most wonderful thing. You know why? Because I get to work with people I want to work with. Right? I get to work with people I respect. I get to work with people I trust, and we get to buy into a single strategy. And it's not my strategy. It's a vision, and then we build on it. We amend it. We pivot it. But we are a team that gets on with each other, and that's really been enjoyable, right? And you can't get that many times in life because again, you go and join a corporate, a startup. You're going to be working with people you didn't know. This has been amazing, right? So at some point, if you ever get into this situation, it's a really good one. Actually, this is currently the most interesting bit for me, choosing who do I want to work with, because that's quite a big liberty that you don't get very often in life. Our exit is already agreed, right? We want to exit within 6 or 7 years. So I'll come back in 7 years and I'll be a success story or a failure, right? And I'll either be very, very rich or very, very poor. Nature of what we're trying to do. We're trying to create a $1 billion business, okay? And of course, if we hold equity, then you can see that. Now, I'm not saying that to be egotistical. I'm saying it is black and white. There is no in between. There's no some part success. There's either complete success or complete failure. And so we'll see. You can hold me to it in 6 or 7 years. I've talked way too long, and I know I've got to finish in a minute, so I haven't had any questions. But quickly, network, do it. However you've got to do it. Really have got to do it. Find a mentor if you can. Really powerful. I've got a guy that I've worked with for years. Still see him. Still talk to him. He just gives me life advice. Sometimes calls me a bit of an idiot. Sometimes sets me back a little bit because he pulls me back from my dreams, and that's good, right? It's good. So if you can get one, get one. Really, really powerful. Be open. Be the best you can be. Right? Be the best you can be. You don't have to be the best, but you have to be the best you can be, right? And if you can do that, you can look yourself in the mirror every morning, go to work, come home, look yourself in the mirror. Important. Enjoy what you do. It's not always a big statement, not always possible, right? But if you should constantly strive for it, because if you're enjoying it, you will be more productive. You will be more productive. Fact. It's as simple as that. Make mistakes. make lots of mistakes. Just don't make the same mistake twice. What I tell everyone I work with, screw up. I encourage you to screw up. But if you make that same mistake, that tells me you didn't learn from the first one. So that worries me. Make mistakes, deal with it, move on. Just don't make it again. Have a balance. I don't know how you guys are going to do it, because there's social media to private, to personal, to business. You know, it's not something my generation, we're on the back end of it. But, you know, you've got to find a balance somewhere, and you've got to know which one you are. So if you're playing two different parts in terms of your social media compared to your work life, be clear. Those are going to blur, right? And, you know, there are companies looking back in their recruiting stage on social media to see what their applicants did 4, 5, 6, 10 years ago on social media, and it's playing a part in their decision making. So think about it, right? Is all I would say. Think about it, and keep learning. Always keep learning. Always keep learning. And that's it. I've got 1 minute for questions, which I deliberately did in case there's any tough questions. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Darren. Darren, let's maybe have one question. And I think this is the one that I think is quite interesting as well. And then we'll follow you the rest of the questions if you're okay.
Yeah, sure.
Just one last question. We mentioned that we cannot control luck, but do you think that we can attract it, and how?
Yeah. I think, look, you're a completely optimistic person. You're sat in your office just thinking, any day now, something good is going to come. That's a hope strategy, I would say. It's a hope strategy, right? And of course it could. I think you can attract it by being clear on the value you bring, right? If you know what you're good at, then I think opportunities will come your way, right? If you're confident in yourself, people will. And confidence doesn't mean being the loudest guy or loudest girl in the office. It's not that, right? It can be inner confidence. That person says, that person knows they know their shit. They know what they're doing, right? That will attract opportunities. It will attract it. So don't rely on luck, but accept that if you're confident in yourself, I believe opportunities will find you one way or the other, whether it's people, competitors, a move to somewhere, it will find you. But don't sit back and I wouldn't suggest sitting back and wait. It's probably what I do.
Thank you very much, Darren. And we'll follow you the rest of the questions that come from our GMBA students as well. On this note, this concludes our end of our Q&A session. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Darren for being here and taking the time and effort to actually be here, even in our campus, to actually help us talk to our GMBA students today.
Yeah, look, thank you, everyone, and good luck the rest of your course, and go get your wings when you leave and fly.
Thank you very much, Darren.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.